Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of MedHeads, MedCityNews.com's end of the week broadcast looking at the week that was in the business of healthcare. It feels like it's been forever since we've talked to you, since we've had all these fine holidays and technical malfunctions, but we are back to talk about all the interesting news here. I am Chris Sepper. I'm your host. I'm based here in beautiful Cleveland, Ohio. Out in San Diego is Meghana Keshavan. She writes about early stage innovations in life sciences. How are you, Meghana?
I'm dandy.
Dandy. Equally as dandy is Neil Bracel. He is based in Chicago, and he writes about how technology is being applied in healthcare. Neil, how's life?
Doing great. Looking forward to seeing you in person next week.
Many of us will be meeting face-to-face at MedCity Engage, which is MedCityNews.com's patient engagement conference. It's next week. Much to talk about later in the show about that. But let's start first with some of the bigger news of the week. And Neil, we'll talk with you first. A lot of government stuff this week. Andy Slavitt, number one, finally getting the ring on it when it comes to permanent leadership of CMS. But something that happened today is the 21st Century Cures legislation actually moved forward. So fill us in.
Correct. The House voted actually pretty overwhelmingly. I believe it was 344 to 77 to approve the 21st Century Cures Act. Now it still has to go to the Senate, go through that process, and it probably could take a while because Congress shuts down in August. Blah blah blah. You know how Washington works, real slow sometimes. But essentially, it's modernizing the FDA and NIH regulatory processes, also giving some more money to both of those agencies, and they said that it's fully offset with savings that's realized in other parts of the legislation. So it's going to be $1.75 billion annually for NIH for the next 5 years, and $110 million annually for the FDA over the next 5 years. And according to the bill's sponsors, it is fully paid for or offset. So that should keep the budget hawks in line, and probably why got so many votes in the House. But Meghana, you probably know more about the details of FDA and NIH, FDA regulation and NIH research. So maybe you wanna jump in here?
Sure. Yeah. So there, as you said, there's been an overwhelmingly positive vote for 21st Century Cures, but it's interesting because at the same time there are some probably legitimate criticisms of the bill, just because it'll speed through therapies so that it'll get through the regulatory pathway a lot faster. That's the idea of this, and get drugs to smaller populations, your orphan populations faster. But the concern is that it might do this a little too quickly. Like, we have these hurdles in place so that people do not get hurt by our drugs, because right now, so many drugs that start off in clinical trial, we lost Chris. So many of the drugs that we start off with in clinical trials, they flop.
Yeah.
And they flop because somewhere along the way, it didn't meet FDA standard, and it doesn't make it to the patient for a reason most of the time. And so the concern is that some of these things might fall through the cracks, and some dangerous stuff could get through. But right now there is a need for better orphan therapies out there, and so the good thing about this bill is that it could hasten some of these cures.
Mm-hmm.
And it is interesting because it still needs to go through Senate vote.
Yeah.
And if it manages to do that and then winds up on the president's desk, people are projecting that it'll look very different than it does right now. It'll probably have a lot of these stipulations cut out of it. But
Oh, you think that it's going to go through some changes in the Senate?
Yeah, I absolutely think so, and I think a lot of people are thinking that.
Okay.
Because right now it's a very wide-spanning bill, and I think that somewhere along the way people are gonna, some of these opponents are gonna get their way and say, hey, we still need a little bit of caution in speeding therapies through. So there's still a way to go.
Okay. Now, I was kind of personally interested as the health IT reporter in the possibility that this could put the development of mobile apps on a different track than medical devices in some cases. Do you know much about that?
I don't know as much
Okay.
about and I don't know as much about the EHR things that are attached to this whole 21st century. deal.
Well, and there's been separate legislation about mobile apps, right? I mean, I think there was something that was presented and might still be under discussion from about 6 to 10 months ago. But that's yeah. I'm glad you said that, Megan, because I think that in the end, the 21st, everybody loves this so much. It's clear that hardly anybody's read it, right? I mean, when you get legislators who are reading that much of it, you just have to kind of have an open question on whether it's going forward or not. What do you think? You mentioned changes. Do you have an idea on some of the things that might change and when it goes into the Senate?
I don't feel equipped to speak about that right now. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
But you know.
Are you in a fax? That's an awesome ring. That's like a fax machine ring there.
Is that you, Neil?
So.
I muted myself.
Right. We can still. Anyway. Well, Neil, let's shift gears because I mean this is gonna, like you said, it's gonna hit. It might not make it before the congressional break.
Right.
But it sounds like you're going to see some version of 21st century cures that happens, this year, very easy. So, it'll be interesting to see who takes advantage of that first. I bet. Well, and let's talk. So Neil, also, Andy Slavitt's been running CMS essentially, but with an interim tag.
Yeah.
So now they want him to get. They're finally going to say, let's give him the real one, but that doesn't seem like it's going to go down pretty easy. I mean, there is a little political shrapnel.
No, there seems to be more politics than I originally thought when I saw that he had been nominated. First of all, the White House didn't announce it until after hours, after 5 p.m. Eastern time, which means it often misses the evening news cycle. But there was some responses from the key Republicans immediately after the nomination. Now he's been running CMS on an interim basis since the beginning of March, when Marilyn Tavenner stepped down. She stepped down actually at the end of February. But Slavitt is controversial in that he came from United Healthcare's Optum, which is the United Healthcare's data mining and analytics subsidiary, but that was from a subsidiary of Optum had built the registration system for healthcare.gov, and as we know, healthcare.gov originally was a massive failure, mostly because of the slowness of the registration process, and that's where it was getting hung up by extra demand that I guess they had not built for. Now, after the problems, Optum was actually given more, or Optum's subsidiary was given more responsibility to help fix it and to help clean up the mess. And then last summer, Slavitt was brought in at CMS to be essentially in charge of healthcare.gov. And then he, of course, was named acting administrator after, when Tavenner announced that she was stepping down. But the ties to healthcare.gov, make him politically toxic to some people. And in fact, a statement from Mitch McConnell yesterday, I'm reading directly, it said, "It has long been clear that no one can successfully manage a law as unworkable as Obamacare. The sole focus of CMS should be to look out for our nation's seniors and the many vulnerable Americans who use these programs without the distraction of Obamacare." And also, Orrin Hatch, who's also well respected in the Senate, said that, quote, "Slavitt will need to answer a number of tough questions regarding his former employer and the relationship with the agency." So this may be grandstanding, but there could be a legitimate political fight brewing.
Yeah, I just it's fascinating. When are we going to let Obamacare go? Right? Hold on, I'm working sound effects here because we want to be like a radio station, right? Because like 1970. But really, I mean, I think
this isn't morning zoo. I hope not going to.
No.
Okay.
Well,
kazoos.
It's true that Obamacare is an extremely complicated law that we need to fix and tweak. But at some point, when are we going to let the guerrilla warfare go and actually just allow this thing to get fixed properly? Right? Hold on.
Probably not till after the 2016 election.
Yeah, that's what my guess is too.
The snow glows white on the mountain tonight. Got a foot
Can you hear this?
to receive.
I'm looking. Where's my mic?
A kingdom of isolation.
It's frozen. It's Let It Go. I was trying to do Let It Go for Obamacare, right?
Oh, it's not on purpose. I thought my iTunes was going off.
You rock out the Let It Go on a regular basis?
Oh, it was so embarrassing. I was driving in my car, I think it was last year, but I had the windows down on accident and I was belting Let It Go.
Don't let them see, Republicans, what Obamacare might have to be.
Look forward to the chorus on this one. There's a lot of...
I've only seen the movie once.
I've seen it like 5 times.
Let Obamacare go. Let it go. Let's Slavitt have his job. Let it go. Okay. Anyway, Megan, in a more tangible.
However, I could see some of the more liberal Democrats opposing him as well.
Why's that?
Because of his ties to United Healthcare.
Democrats, let it go. Let it go. It's all about data and payers. But Megan, let's shift gears mercifully out of Obamacare and politics, and let's go to Theranos, because Theranos has had two things happen in the last couple of weeks, right? I mean, they inked this deal with Blue Cross, which is very important, but it's also that they got their approvals, right? So run that down for us.
Yeah, so this was kind of exciting. Last week, Theranos announced that it got FDA approval for its HSV-1 test, which is a big deal because everyone has, for years, been criticizing Theranos for not being a academically validated, FDA-approved company, even though their valuation's up to $9 billion. Like, nobody really... I mean, people have just been rolling their eyes, and they're like, is this really all that it's chalked up to be? But getting FDA approval for a diagnostic is actually a pretty legitimate validation. It's not easy to get FDA approval, and you don't actually have to if you're a diagnostics maker. I mean, it adds to your cash, but you don't have to get diagnostic approval by FDA. So getting this one test validated is a big deal, and I spoke with a representative from the company, and they are planning on, putting more than 100 tests through the FDA validation process. That means that they have to expose their science to, outside review, which is, it's a big deal for Theranos. And then as it stands right now, they have a partnership with Walgreens where you can get Theranos diagnostics in California and Arizona. But as of this week, they partnered with Blue Cross in Pennsylvania. So I think, let me just double check the number. Yeah, so this expands the single drop of blood testing to 725,000 patients throughout Pennsylvania. So it's really it's bringing Theranos to the East Coast. This company, which is meant to democratize the blood diagnostics process, is becoming pretty. It's getting its widespread reach now. So.
Now, I'm curious, as somebody who doesn't really follow that part of the business that closely, the founder of Theranos is supposedly the world's youngest self-made female billionaire.
Yeah, her value is $5 billion.
Yet the company has almost no revenue.
Yeah, it's real low revenue.
What are we doing wrong? What are we doing wrong?
What are we doing wrong? Well, seriously, it's like that. I keep on going back to that IPO from a couple. Remember when you, Stephanie, and I were talking about the Alzheimer drug that got this insane IPO? Yeah, it's one of those things. But like I said, with the FDA validation, with this large partnership with Blue Cross, I think I've always been a proponent for Theranos, honestly. Like, I think that there's a method to the madness, even though there have been critics. And I think they've got the marketing power, they've got the reputation, and the partnerships in place. I think that there's something to it. I think that it'll expand. And I think we have a real market gap when it comes to diagnostics. Right now, you have to usually, like, the standard is to take a couple vials of blood run it through a screener. Some tests take longer than others, but it's an involved process. This involves you going to a drugstore and doing a finger stick and figuring out if you have a whole litany of diseases. So,
Megan, is it really important that they got the FDA approval now, in part because there are people who you could legitimately see as a competitor, or if not a competitor, or at least a substitute or a me too of Theranos? I mean, you did a piece a while back that kind of listed kind of Theranos competitors or alternatives to Theranos. I mean,
yeah.
or are they so far advanced that these are the moments where the company with no revenue becomes Facebook?
I kind of throw myself in the latter camp, honestly. I think I don't know, maybe it's just that I'm a believer, but like I think that there are a lot of companies in the whole theranostics field that can come up with diagnostics based on a single drop of blood. There are ways to track immune signatures inside the blood to figure out what disease you have. But the thing about Theranos is that it's already got this whole wide realm of market-ready diagnostics. And it's got a name and it's got the connections. So I think this is just the tipping point. I think that the FDA approval is not to protect itself against competitors, but to legitimize itself among an audience of like academics and naysayers, and saying, hey, we do have what it takes, and now we're ready to jump off and start accomplishing things. Is what I think. I think it's been a company that's been a company to watch, and it'll continue to be that.
Oh, definitely. Let's shift gears again, and let's talk about probably the story that kind of left our jaws dropping for most of it. And this is right in my backyard. The gentleman who runs Cleveland Clinic Innovations, Gary Fingerhut, is out of a job, and we only know a very little bit about it. But he apparently there was some. Megan, you wrote the story, so let's talk about it. It's important because really Cleveland Clinic has become a model for tech transfer amongst many providers, and is even doing it on behalf of some providers. But now, I mean, it borders with the amount of turnover there in that leadership position almost on disarray. So tell us more about it.
Well, what I didn't realize until I started writing the story is that you're right. There has been a lot of turnover in the Cleveland Clinic Innovations office. So the thing is that Cleveland Clinic Innovations has spun out 43 companies based on Cleveland Clinic technology, but then it also helps other health systems like MedStar in the Baltimore area and some other ones in commercializing their technology. And these days, tech transfer is just exploding. People are trying to take these technologies that are on the bench and being done by academicians and commercializing them. And Cleveland Clinic Innovations has been a real, model for that. 2 years ago, Gary Fingerhut came into the role as the executive director of it. Before that, he was the acting director, and he's been with Cleveland Clinic for quite a long time. I'm not even sure, but it's been like about a decade at least. And looks like he was removed from his position earlier this week.
Well, here, let me jump in. Let me just read. All we know is
come on. We had the FBI raided his house, right? We got
the FBI did not raid.
No.
The FBI did not raid his house. Let's read what we know, and I'd love to parse out tea leaves here, because all we know is that he left sometime. They won't even say when, but from what I understand, it could be in last week. Although he was tweeting about Cleveland Clinic Innovations as of Monday.
And the person that I spoke to said that he only heard. I'm guessing it was Tuesday, basically.
Yeah. We were recently notified by a government agency regarding certain financial transactions involving one of our spin-off companies. The information led to the identification of violations in Cleveland Clinic policy, and appropriate actions were taken. Cleveland Clinic was not a part of this inquiry. The current chairman of Innovations, Tom Graham, I believe, will oversee the office while a search for a new executive director is underway. When you hear that, what do you hear, Megan?
What do I hear?
Yeah.
Well, I hear that some untoward business was occurring with said spin-off company, and I heard straight from someone's mouth that it was the FBI. I spoke with the FBI, so there's some.
But even then, I mean, we check with the FBI. I mean, here's what I hear when I listen to this. We were recently notified of government agency regarding certain financial transactions in one of our spin-off companies. One of the companies that spun out of us went rogue. Right? Let's break it down into human talk. The information led to identification of violations of Cleveland Clinic policy, and appropriate actions were taken. We're going to use Gary as the fall guy here. Gary should have known, he didn't, and we let him go. Right? Cleveland Clinic was not part of this inquiry, which means they're looking at the startup company. They're not looking at us. We didn't do anything wrong. It was this independent company that spun out of us, right? And then the last one is we're looking for somebody to fill the job. That's what I hear. Now, it should be said that both of us have heard the startup company that is under investigation, but we don't know that we're correct. It's the only reason we haven't run it. And as soon as we think we're correct, we'll run it.
There are a lot. That's why I'm a little cagey about talking about this, because there are a lot of things that we think we know that we cannot talk about quite yet. So
yeah. Well, let's stay off. And just disclaimer. Yeah, Gary Fingerhut spoke at Converge last year, our Converge Innovation Conference. He was on the advisory board of our investor conference that happens in Chicago. I know him. I mean, we've talked a lot in different venues because of that. So this is a guy I know, and honestly I like him. In fact, I even liked the last guy, Chris Coburn, who was in there. I thought he was a good guy, and he actually went to the MedCity's cornhole tournaments, which was back in the first year of the conference. So let's separate it from the person, but the impact of the fact that Innovations is connected with MedStar, obviously in DC, and it's just made a strategic partnership in Israel. I mean, there's a lot of and I think there's always hope that providers get better at tech transfer and innovation, and I think that's the part that probably, in the broader scope of our conversation, is a thing that kind of worries you, is can a tech transfer operation in a major hospital hit its stride effectively? And that's the question, that because there's a lot of innovations that are not unlocked in our health systems that could be doing good in the country and beyond.
This is so true, and I've spoken with a lot of tech transfer people, and I think that there's something interesting about the way that tech transfer officers are compensated, and how they're motivated to make these deals go through, because it's not the same as a venture capital setup, where venture capitalists automatically get a bit of equity or whatever it is. Sometimes tech transfer officers have to do this just because it's their job. And they don't, I think it was Chris Coburn who,
yep.
He made a lot of money off of having a bit of equity in a company that got acquired. But this isn't the case for all tech transfer officer setups, and so it's just interesting how some of the duties of a tech transfer officer are very similar to equity, private equity, venture capital, but it's academia, it's research institutions, so. It's just a fascinating space that is still trying to find its footing, is what I'm trying to say, if that makes any sense.
It is, and it'll be interesting to see who the next person is who runs innovations. It's not like I can't imagine that's a short list of people raising their hand to run the operation despite the troubles. And I would say this, I would say that it's probably tougher to run a tech transfer innovations office and Cleveland Clinic than almost any other hospital, only because it really is a physician-run institution. And I know that the leader of innovations catches shrapnel all the time because physicians, the idea that part of their innovation goes to enrich others is tough. And clinic has always been a doctor-first culture. And so it's hard for a non-MD to run that shop. So it'll be interesting to see who they get next.
Yeah. Speaking of Cleveland Clinic, by the way, it's confirmed officially by Cleveland Clinic. I'm moving to Cleveland next year, not till next July.
Cleveland, city of wonder, city of light.
Well, my fiance got a urology fellowship there, so #1 urology program in the country.
#1 urology program in the country. He'll be doing vasectomies like nobody's business. Let him have a steady hand and an honest heart, and the people of Cleveland will be happy with him. And it'll be great that Megan will be here in Cleveland in a year, which is good. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, now it's official, so I can publicly announce it.
So let's shift gears again for our final talk. Let's talk about MedCity Engage. It's MedCity News patient engagement conference that's going to be happening next week. Neil will be there. I will be there. Stephanie Baum will be there. You know, and what will be a really impressive lineup. And I think one of the things I think everybody should know about MedCity conferences is we never pick a silo, right? It's MedCity site writes about the innovation community as an ecosystem, and we see the same things with the big challenges in healthcare. So you've got John Castellani from Pharma coming to speak. You know, you've got Roy Beveridge from Humana coming to speak. You've got Susanna Fox and John White coming to speak from the federal government, and you've got people from Alina and from GW's Cancer Center and from other health systems as well.
And this will be one of Susanna's first major public talks since she went to HHS.
I want to come.
We should get you a late ticket. Well, you know, I mean, talk about we're three people, three different areas and interests. Let's talk about patient engagement and what we're hoping, what we would like to see happen more. Neil, why don't we start with you? When you think about patient engagement, what needs to happen in your neck of the woods?
Well, I think that you know, a lot is happening. The patient community is starting to make some noise. We reported this week about the White House Champions of Change naming 9 people in precision medicine, and you know, a couple of those were really big on the patient engagement part, and Susanna probably was behind those, had a hand in those invites. Those 2 people, of course, were Hugo Campos and Amy. Help me out here, Amy. I'm now blanking out. So
Schumer.
Asking me to do, not Amy Schumer, but is she coming to Engage? We should invite her.
That would be a great talk.
But I think that you know, there is movement on the patient side, but there's still this whole thing with data blocking or information blocking, as ONC called it. And in fact, the 21st Century Cares Act is supposed to address some of that. I'm not exactly sure of the mechanism, but it's supposed to address some of that, and you know, to make interoperability part of all of HHS policy and not just meaningful use and you know, things going on within ONC and CMS. So you know, we're going to hear a lot about that. One session that I am moderating on Tuesday is going to be on price transparency, and that's part of a whole. It's a different area of information blocking and patient engagement as well, but because you really can't have consumerism in healthcare unless you know what things cost. So I think, you know, that's going to be a very important panel. I believe it's 3:30 Eastern on Tuesday. By the way, this is taking place in Bethesda, Maryland. So if you're in the D.C. area, or even Baltimore, Philadelphia, Richmond, anywhere within a couple of hours,
San Diego,
come on down. Yeah, San Diego, come on down. It'll be. I'm going to have some family there present, cheering me on as well. So it was the.
Good. Well, we have. I mean, patients are important. So I mean, I think we want.
Yeah.
This is one of those conferences. What doesn't happen at our other events is that we have people who are consumers or patients come to the conference. We actually did person on the street interviews with patients, and we're going to be showing snippets of those videos throughout the event. Megan, but when you think about engagement on your side of the aisle, what will be the most helpful change, do you think?
So this is going to back into some news that came out this week. 23andMe got $79 million. They're expanding their therapeutics arm. They spoke with Kai Risdall on Marketplace this week about what they're doing with that funding, and there's been some criticism on, like, should patients be giving their information, or should users be giving their genetic info to 23andMe so that they can sell that to big pharma to use that genetic info? And 23andMe is saying yes, absolutely, because by our giving your genetic information to Roche and other big pharma, we are helping speed the personalized cures to you, the patient. So what I'm trying to say is that I think that the steps are starting to be made where patients are, in all kinds of ways, getting involved in, you know, developing new therapies and improving the healthcare system. You know, there's a lot being said for patient advocacy now. Big pharma is, you know, tapping into these advocacy groups and getting their opinions and figuring out, you know, what do they need in terms of drugs. this is part of the 21st Century Cures Act. You know, like patient engagement is huge now. Like that is the direction of medicine right now. Isn't that what Eric Topol says anyway? Like the patient will see you.
The patient will see you now. Yep.
Will see you now. It's the way that it's headed. I mean, you're seeing it in all places, like with the all the apps, Apple Research Kit, things like that. You know, we're getting there.
No, I think that. Go ahead.
I'm such an optimist. I said.
I do. I mean, I think that it's reached its Kairos moment, right? And you know, when I think about engagement, what's been interesting and what we're going to spend actually some decent time and engage about are the lay community's role in helping patients, not patients themselves, but patient navigators or caregivers or others who actually are seeing formal roles within the health system, not just in support systems of patients like boomerang children, but really navigators and others who are being hired as non-medical professionals to support that medical process, either to navigate somebody through or to be a care coordinator. You know, there's more and more legitimate empirical research about how those kinds of roles can help. I'm struck by, for as much as the technology is out there, and Research Kit and the Apple Watch are good examples, highest profile examples, a lot of the best patient engagement around the most important things like medication adherence and beyond seem to be done when you have physical human beings building relationships and going forward. Information is being disseminated better digitally, but that compliance and that ability for people to take their meds and do well still has a huge human element that we haven't been able to replicate through algorithms or technologies. And we are seeing more data on that. So that's one of the things that I'm excited about in Engage. And again, I love this lineup. I actually, this is corny, I know, but in my home study I have the big like board agendas that we used to put on display outside the rooms. I have them framed on in my study. And I looked at the Engage agenda from year 1 2 years ago, and this one, it is such a dramatic difference in the quality of speaker and even the diversity of the discussions. So I'm excited to see all that happen, and I do hope that anybody who wants to come does come. So we'll have extensive coverage next week. I want to thank everybody who has been watching and will watch MedHeads this week. You know, so much stuff going on in healthcare, from Theranos to changes in big tech transfer offices to what's happening with the 21st Century Cure Act. From Megan Akeshavan, for Neil Vercel, I'm Chris Sepper. I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week in Bethesda. See ya. Later.
Goodbye.